Ladies and gentlemen, today I invite you into a space not of noise, not of distraction, but of deep silence, because there is a moment when the body quiets down, when the cravings are paused, when the flesh stops clamoring for attention. And in that sacred stillness, the soul begins to speak. You see, abstinence isn't just about what you deny, it's about what you awaken. It's not just about no. It's about opening yourself to a bigger yes. A yes to clarity, a yes to power, a yes to truth. Let's talk about the noise, the constant, buzzing, restless noise that fills our lives every single day. We wake up, and before our feet even touch the ground, the world is already pulling at us emails, social media, news feeds, deadlines, expectations. Our phones light up, our minds race, our hearts pound, and we haven't even taken a breath yet. And then we wonder why we can't hear our own thoughts, why we feel disconnected, why we're restless, anxious, searching, craving something we can't even name. But here's the truth: noise doesn't just live outside us. It lives inside us. It's in the way we rush to fill the empty spaces, the way we grab for entertainment the second there's a pause, the way we reach for food, for people, for habits, for distractions that we know don't nourish us, but at least keep the silence away. Because silence is scary. Silence feels like deprivation. Silence feels like being left alone with yourself. But here's the paradox: silence is the only place where the real answers live. Abstinence, at its core, is about choosing to step away from the noise. It's about saying, I will not let the cravings rule me. I will not let the distractions own me. I will not let the endless chase for more drown out the still, small voice inside that knows what I truly need. Because when you take away the thing you usually run to, whether that's food, sex, alcohol, social media, mindless entertainment, constant busyness, when you take that away, something happens. The body starts to go quiet. The noise settles, and that's when the soul begins to speak. But make no mistake, at first, the silence will be loud. It will scream at you. You'll feel the itch to check your phone, the hunger that might not even be physical, the urge to go back to the very thing you're abstaining from. And that's where most people give up. They think, this discomfort means something's wrong. This discomfort means I'm depriving myself. But the discomfort is not a signal that something's wrong. It's a signal that something's waking up. Because when you silence the body's impulses, you clear the space for revelation. You make room for clarity. You make room for truth. And here's the truth that abstinence reveals. So much of what we think we need, we don't actually need. So much of what we think sustains us is actually keeping us weak. So much of what we think brings us pleasure is actually keeping us numb. And abstinence, the brave act of saying no, strips all of that away. It peels back the layers. It exposes the raw, honest hunger underneath. And what is that hunger? It's not just the hunger for physical satisfaction. It's not just the hunger for more dopamine hits, more surface-level highs, more temporary escapes. No, the hunger underneath the hunger is the hunger for meaning. It's the hunger for connection. It's the hunger for purpose, for alignment, for a life that feels rooted and real and awake. But you will never hear that hunger if you keep feeding the shallow cravings. You will never feel that ache for truth if you keep numbing yourself with temporary fixes. That's why abstinence is not about deprivation. It's about restoration. It's about restoring the connection between you and your own soul. It's about restoring the connection between you and the higher purpose you were meant to serve. Because when you step back from the noise, when you silence the body, you begin to notice things you never noticed before. You begin to feel the stirrings of desires that were buried under the noise. You begin to hear the whisper of wisdom that was drowned out by the cravings. You begin to realize that there is a deeper hunger, a sacred hunger, that no amount of earthly satisfaction can touch. And once you've tasted that, you can never go back. Once you've heard the voice of your own soul, once you've felt the pull of something higher, once you've glimpsed the truth underneath the distractions, you can no longer settle for the shallow things. You start to crave clarity. You start to crave authenticity. You start to crave alignment with your higher calling. And that is the gift that abstinence offers. That is the breakthrough that only comes when the body goes silent, when the cravings are quieted, when the noise is stripped away. So don't be afraid of the silence. Don't be afraid of the discomfort. Don't be afraid of the hunger that rises up when you stop feeding the surface cravings. That hunger is your teacher. That hunger is your guide. That hunger is the signal that you are on the edge of something real, something transformational, something that will change the way you see yourself and the world. Because when the body goes silent, the soul speaks, and when the soul speaks, it speaks the truth you were made to hear all along. There is a hidden truth most people never realize, and that truth is you are always aligning with something, whether you know it or not. Every single choice you make, every yes and every no, every craving you feed and every craving you resist is shaping the path you walk and crafting the person you become, because alignment is not some distant, abstract idea. It's not something you put off until tomorrow or some future season when you have more time or more clarity or more strength. Alignment is happening right now in real time with every single decision you make, because when you choose to abstain, when you choose to say no to the things that call to your lower nature, you are not just practicing self-denial, you are practicing realignment. You are shifting your focus from the temporary to the eternal, from the shallow to the deep, from the fleeting satisfaction of the body to the lasting fulfillment of the soul. And that shift is powerful, because what you align with shapes what you become. When you align with temporary pleasures, you become driven by temporary things. You become a person who chases moments, who lives for the next fix, the next thrill, the next rush. But when you align with purpose, when you align with truth, when you align with the highest version of yourself, you become a person who is rooted and grounded and powerful beyond the reach of passing cravings. And here's the part most people miss: abstinence is not about rejecting life or rejecting pleasure or rejecting good things. It's about choosing the best things. It's about creating space for what actually matters. It's about refusing to let your deepest self be crowded out by the noise of the surface, because the truth is you cannot fill your life with everything and expect to have room left for what matters most. You cannot chase every desire and still walk the path of destiny. You cannot align with every craving and still align with your calling, because alignment requires choice. It requires clarity. It requires saying, this is what I stand for, this is what I pursue, this is what I allow to shape me. And when you step into abstinence, you are declaring a new alignment. You are saying, I refuse to be ruled by what is momentary. I refuse to be shaped by what is shallow. I refuse to let my identity be defined by cravings that come and go. I choose to align with something greater, something higher, something that calls out the best in me, not the weakest. And this is why abstinence is not loss, but gain. It is not about what you give up. It is about what you make room for. It is about what you open your hands to receive when you finally stop clutching the lesser things. Because when you abstain, you shift the gravitational pull of your life. You shift it away from distraction, and towards focus, away from exhaustion, and towards renewal, away from fragmentation, and towards wholeness. And here's where it gets truly transformative: when you start living in alignment with your highest values, when you start living in alignment with your purpose, when you start living in alignment with your truth, you become magnetic. You start attracting the right people, the right opportunities, the right breakthroughs, not because you're striving harder, but because you are now positioned to receive what was meant for you all along. Because alignment is a doorway, it is a portal. It is the space where destiny meets discipline, where purpose meets preparation, where the life you were created for finally finds you. But none of this happens if you refuse to abstain. None of this happens if you keep saying yes to every craving that knocks at your door. None of this happens if you keep aligning with your lesser self and hoping somehow to rise into your higher calling. Because the truth is, you cannot align with both. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot walk two paths. And the beauty of abstinence is that it gives you the power to choose the path that leads to life, to choose the alignment that leads to transformation, to choose the focus that leads to the fulfillment you were made for. And when you choose that, you are not stepping into a smaller life, you are stepping into the only life worth living, the one that was waiting for you on the other side of every lesser. Yes, you had the courage to turn down. There is a kind of authority most people never taste because they are too busy chasing after the wrong kind of power. They think power is about control over others, about status, about how many people listen to you, or how many doors open for you, or how many likes and followers you can collect. But real authority, the kind that moves mountains, the kind that shifts atmospheres, the kind that makes things happen, begins with the power you hold over yourself, because you will never have power in the world if you have no power within. And this is where abstinence becomes a weapon, not a weakness, when you choose to silence the body, when you choose to take control over your cravings, when you choose to stand firm and say no to the impulse that wants to run the show. You activate a level of authority inside you that no one can take away, because it's not built on image or performance or external validation. It's built on mastery, self-mastery, and this is the kind of mastery that transforms lives. Because here's what's true: if you cannot command your own desires, you cannot command your own destiny. If you are always pulled by the next craving, the next temptation, the next distraction, then you are not leading your life. Your cravings are leading you, your impulses are leading you, your habits are leading you, and you are just following along, hoping for the best. But when you stand up and say enough, when you silence the body and listen to the soul, when you practice the discipline of abstinence, you flip the script. You shift from being reactive to being proactive. You shift from being ruled by life to ruling over life. You shift from being a follower of impulses to being a leader of purpose. And this shift is where real authority is born, because authority is not about what you can force, it's about what you can hold steady. Authority is not about noise, it's about presence. It's about standing so firmly in who you are and what you value that you cannot be shaken no matter what comes at you. And abstinence is what builds this kind of unshakable foundation, because every time you say no to what is lesser, you strengthen your ability to say yes to what is greater. Every time you resist the urge to numb out or escape or overindulge, you are teaching your body that it is not in charge. You are training your mind that it does not have to obey every fleeting thought. You are awakening your spirit to the truth that you are made to rule, not to be ruled. And here's where it gets even more powerful. When you activate authority over yourself, you begin to carry authority for others. People feel it. They sense it. They are drawn to it, because we are all looking for leaders who are not blown around by every wind, who are not trapped by the same addictions, who are not enslaved to the same distractions. We are looking for people who stand tall, who stand clear, who stand focused. And when you walk in the authority that comes from self-mastery, you become a light, you become a signal, you become someone who others instinctively trust, because they can see you are not just performing, you are living from a place of real strength. But none of this happens by accident. None of this is automatic, because authority cannot be handed to you. It must be grown within you, and abstinence is the soil where that authority takes root. Every time you practice restraint, every time you step back from the noise, every time you choose presence over distraction, you are expanding your internal capacity to lead, to influence, to create, to shape not just your own life, but the lives of those around you. And the beauty is that this kind of authority does not fade with time. It does not crumble when circumstances change. It does not depend on whether people approve of you or not, because it is anchored deep within. It is anchored in the alignment between your soul and your actions, between your values and your choices, between your purpose and your practice. And when you have that alignment, you have a presence that cannot be faked and cannot be shaken, because you are no longer ruled by what's outside. You are ruled by what's inside, and what's inside you is powerful and steady and true. And all of it becomes possible when you silence the body and let the soul take the lead. When you remember that the highest authority you can carry in this world begins with the quietest and hardest victories, the victories over yourself that no one else sees, but everyone else eventually feels. There is a hunger inside every human being that no one can escape, a hunger that goes beyond food, beyond comfort, beyond the surface level cravings. we think will satisfy us but never truly do, and most people spend their entire lives chasing satisfaction in places that only leave them emptier because they don't understand the nature of their own hunger. They think if they just had more money, more pleasure, more success, more attention, they would finally feel full. But the truth is the soul is not starving for pleasure, the soul is starving for purpose. And this is where abstinence reveals its greatest gift, because when you step back from the things you normally run to, when you pause the endless cycle of feeding your cravings, when you silence the noise of constant consumption, you create space for a deeper hunger to rise up. And that hunger is the hunger for meaning, the hunger for alignment, the hunger for a life that is connected to something larger than yourself. But you will never hear that hunger if you keep drowning it out with distractions, because cravings are loud, cravings demand attention, they push themselves to the front. They convince you that they are urgent, that they are essential, that you must satisfy them now or you'll miss out. But when you practice abstinence, when you interrupt that pattern, when you deliberately say no to the thing you're used to grabbing, you begin to hear the quieter voice underneath, the voice that has been waiting for you to listen, the voice that says you were made for more, you were made for greatness, you were made for connection to something sacred and eternal and lasting. But you cannot taste that connection. If your hands are already full of lesser things, you cannot satisfy the deeper hunger. If you keep stuffing yourself with what does not nourish you, you cannot experience the joy of alignment. If you keep selling your attention every shallow distraction that comes your way, and here is the beautiful paradox, the moment you begin to abstain is the moment you begin to awaken, the moment you create space by saying no is the moment you begin to receive, the moment you silence the cravings of the body is the moment the soul begins to speak. And when the soul speaks, it doesn't speak about surface level things. It doesn't say chase more pleasure, chase more approval, chase more consumption. No, the soul says listen to the ache you've been ignoring, listen to the part of you that longs for meaning, listen to the call that has been buried under years of noise, because the soul knows the real hunger. The soul knows you were made for love, and not just romantic love, but the love that comes from knowing you are connected to a divine purpose, a higher calling, a life that leaves a mark on this world. The soul knows you were made for peace, not the temporary escape you get from numbing out, but the deep peace that comes when you are walking in alignment with your truest self. The soul knows you were made for impact, not just personal success, but the kind of impact that lifts others, that transforms lives, that brings light into dark places. But none of this can be accessed if you are constantly feeding the body's cravings. None of this can be reached if you are endlessly distracted by things that promise quick satisfaction but leave you emptier in the end. And this is why abstinence is not about punishment. It is not about loss. It is not about legalism or rules or trying to prove something to yourself or others. Abstinence is about awakening. It is about opening your eyes to the truth you have been missing. It is about reclaiming the part of you that longs for more and giving it the space to rise up and lead. Because when you stop feeding the shallow hunger, you start discovering the sacred hunger. When you stop chasing what numbs you, you start awakening to what heals you. When you stop filling yourself with what is easy, you start preparing yourself for what is extraordinary. And that shift, that awakening, that sacred hunger is the beginning of transformation. It is the doorway to a life of purpose and peace and power. And it all begins when you silence the body and let the soul remind you of who you really are and what you were always meant to pursue. So today, I challenge you, where is your body too loud? Where is your life too noisy? What is the craving you need to silence, not because you're denying yourself, but because you are ready to meet your true self? When the body goes silent, the soul speaks. And when the soul speaks, it tells you the truth you've been running from, not the truth of lack, not the truth of fear, but the truth of power, the truth of purpose, the truth of who you really are when you are free. Abstinence is not a prison. It is a portal, a door to the higher version of you. Walk through that door, and you will discover what you were made for. Thank you.